I have the notes. I have the little document kept there. We should write on.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome to the 5329 class. Okay, well, are there any questions before I start? Questions of any kind? Okay, let me just briefly go through the syllabus. We are using the Moodle site. I thought this may be the last time I can use. We all have to move to Canvas starting next semester. Okay. So, couple of exams. The dates are here. The grading policies are here. You can read those things. The class outline is also here. For a good part of the class, the first half or so, we will be using the textbook I wrote 20 years ago. So, okay, so you can get many versions of this. I think the cheapest version would be the Indian print, $10–12. But you can also download other versions. So we won't get into that. I'm not even allowed to talk about those things. Certainly not by the publisher. Okay. Well, okay. So, so we'll go through these things. But let me see. You can read these things. Projects. We'll talk more about those. We'll talk more about those as time goes on. There is no need to hurry about that. The first homework has already been posted. The homeworks will typically be due in a week. That well, actually, they will be due weekly. But I will try to assign them on Tuesday, and they will be due subsequent week, Thursday. Okay, so this is primarily work that will be taught based on lectures that will be taught most likely today and Thursday. Okay, so let's just not worry about this now. Okay, so this class is a computing class about computing DSP systems. So today I am not really going to teach many new things. So my goal today is really to do a review of DSP. Those of you who have forgotten or took long time back. So we are going to be computing some DSP operations, and so it's a good idea to review those kinds of concepts. And next class we'll talk more about new ideas. Okay. So what are some of the typical DSP algorithms that we might be computing? So the simplest DSP operations are the so-called FIR, finite impulse response, and IIR, infinite impulse response digital filters, and FFTs, fast Fourier transforms. So these are what I would consider three of the most commonly used DSP algorithms. The reason I think a good review is useful, because we'll be seeing these things a lot in the class, so it's good to be familiar with these things. So the class really is about well, okay, let me say the class used to be about signal processing, and I want to change that to a certain extent, and maybe not really talk about just signal processing, but maybe talk about some amount of machine learning. So, that's my hope at least, and the way I hope to teach the class will be new. So, maybe the last half of the class the professor and the students will be learning at same time. Okay. So, so that's kind of what the DSP algorithms are, and there are many types of machine learning algorithms, and we'll talk more about those not today, and in particular the structures that we are interested in are so-called artificial neural network and convolutional neural network and many others, but let's not get into those. Okay, so we'll talk about those maybe in a few weeks, but for now let's just try to understand these three operations, and that's kind of, as I said, is a review to most of you. So the simplest computing operation that we can think about is really inner product. So that's kind of you know, if you have a vector A and a vector B, and if this is a n by 1 vector, this is another n by 1 vector, then this is B transpose. So that will be a scalar quantity which is A1 B1 plus A2 B2 plus up to AN Bn. Okay, so that's kind of a very simple computing problem. And if you think about the so-called early computers, in order to compute the early computers were designed to compute inner products. And that means they were designed to do one multiply and one add. So, if you have a computer or a CPU that can compute some kind of a multiplication, and we won't talk about where these are coming from. They probably are stored in maybe the A operations. Let's not worry about that, but maybe the so-called there are somehow we have access to A and B. This could be some kind of a bus fetching A from a memory, B might be stored in cache or whatever. We won't get into those things. And we have an accumulator that accumulates the A and B and the previous partial sum, we can call that partial sum. So, and then add that, this is AI, BI partial sum I minus 1, and add that, and then feed back the partial sum to add the next quantity. So, if I am in step 3, I compute A3 B3 plus partial sum 2, and the next cycle I compute A4 B4 plus the previous sum, and so on. I keep doing that over n cycles, then we are done with the inner product. Okay, so and that delay element here is basically storing, is used to store this result partial sum. So, we feed whatever I feed in clock cycle I here will be available at the output in clock cycle I plus 1. Okay. So, well, inner product is great, but that's not signal processing. So, the closest that you can think about closest to inner product is what? Convolution. Okay. So, the closest concept to inner product is convolution. So, we are now interested in computing a convolution. So, for example, if I have a sequence A and a sequence B, well, let's say x and h, typical notations that we use DSP. So, x is a n point sequence x0 through xn minus 1. H is a m point sequence h0 through hm minus 1. So, x convolved with h is how many point sequence? Many volunteers? Hmm? 2? No, these are m and n. Did I? Yeah, m and n, not n. Yeah. Yeah, very good. So, that will be an m plus n minus 1 point sequence. So, if you take the convolution of two quantities, an m point sequence and an n point sequence, then the result would be an m plus n minus 1 point sequence. And the quickest way to compute that would be, so if I write the Z transform, so let us call it y. So, I can say that y z is equal to x z times h z, which is x 0 plus x 1 z to power minus 1 plus x 2 z to power minus 2. I am not computing the convolution in the time domain, but computing that in the frequency domain, or in this case Z transform domain. So, this would be x 0 h 0 plus x 0 h 1 plus x 1 h 0 times z to power minus 1 plus x 0 h 2 plus x 1 h 1 plus x 2 h 0 times z to power minus 2 and so on. And so, if that is y z, so this will be the first point y 0, this will be second point y 1 and third point y 2 and so on. And then we can compute the last point as x m minus 1 times h x n minus 1 times h m minus 1. So, that is kind of how we compute convolution. Convolution is again a one time operation, and we will talk about what one time operation means and why do I say one time operation. Okay, so so we have an n point sequence and an m point sequence, and we can compute the n plus m minus 1 point convolution. And then we can think about, okay, that's great. This is good. This is what I said is a one time operation. That means this is not a this is not a filtering operation. This is not a filtering operation. Why isn't this a filtering operation? Why isn't a convolution? What's the difference between a convolution of a finite length sequence x with another finite length sequence h is not same as an FIR filter? Any volunteers? Well, I mean, you all have taken DSP, or at least signals and systems. What's the difference between a convolution and an FIR digital filter? Okay, if you don't volunteer, I will ask you at random. Okay, how about you? What's the difference between convolution and FIR filter? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry? You were close. I mean, that's a good point.
Do sample from the past.
Yeah. Yeah. So we need some kind of memory. We need to hold some things, and that's why I was telling you this is a one-time operation. You take an n point sequence and an m point sequence, and you go through this computation once and we are done, and the total number of multiplications here will be n times m. A DESP operation is what we call a non-terminating program. These programs, or if you think about these computations, they go on for infinite length of time. So, that is what real-time DSP operations are, what we would call them as non-terminating programs. And that means this is as if these programs do not terminate. So, unlike this one time program, you have certain task to compute and you compute it once and you are done. So, a simple example of a n tap digital filter. So, if I have an n tap FIR digital filter such that H n is equal to H 0 plus let me well so if we have n tap digital filter, FIR digital filter H of z, which is given by these n taps H 0, H 1 through H, I should be using n minus 1 here. Okay. So, you can plot the unit sample response. Okay, so then we can say that y n, the output y n is now the same as here, x convolved with h, but the x is now an infinite length sequence. So, this is going to be x n. So, at any time point n, and that is what we are focused on at time point n. So, that will be x n h 0 plus x n minus 1 h 1. So, that is h 1 and up to x n minus m minus 1 times h no, this is cap n times h n minus 1. Okay. So, that means we take the current sample x n and we have delayed samples yeah.
So, the signal x will have n minus 1 point. Why you have n here?
Say that again.
The series x only have n minus 1 point, right?
No. X n goes on for days and days. I mean, you think about somebody is speaking and you take that sound and you filter that. So, this n goes on from n equal to 0 to infinity. So, at time 0, we might sample x 0. Let me get to that. So, but I am glad you are asking that. Times h 2. So, y n, so y n is equal to x n, the current sample plus the delayed sample, 1 delayed sample times h 1, 2 delayed sample times h 2 and so on. So, obviously, we do need to hold n minus 1 previous samples. So, an n tap, by the way, when we say an n tap digital filter, n tap digital filter also is equivalent to saying n minus 1th order digital filter. So, for example, a length 5 filter is same as a 4th order filter. So, n minus 1th order, that means we need to hold n minus 1 previous samples, and that is equivalent to the order of the filter. So, that is okay. Those are delays. So, what do I mean by these are non-terminating programs, and what this student was asking about is so think about at time 0, I sample x 0. If these are sampled with certain period t at time t, so think about a signal sampled at period t. So, if you are sampling an MP3 sound, you are sampling that at 44,100 hertz. So, the sampling period t is 1 over 44,100 seconds. Okay. So, at time t we sample x with respect to the analog signal, we sample x continuous time x at t, but we call that x 1. At time 2t we call that x 2, the discrete sample x 2, x 3 and so on. And this goes on infinitely, this goes on and on for as long as somebody is feeding inputs to the system. Is that clearer? Or you can ask me what you were asking then.
How many points does x have?
X can have I do not know 10 million, billion, trillion. As long as you keep feeding, it is computing the same filter, it can be infinite. I mean, actually that's, I want you to think of this as infinite, and that is why I call this non-terminating. Its DSP operations are as if they do not terminate. So, so this can go on. You take you know, well you let's say somebody calls your home and leaves a message, and how long can x and b in that case? Well, you will be timed out after your voice messaging system cannot hold anymore. So, that is kind of the limit. Okay. So, any other questions? So, there are some fundamental differences with the convolution operation. One, this is a one time operation. You take n points and another m points and compute these and be done. Here this x n really can be as many points as possible for all practical purposes. This might you know, we are sampling signals from a certain source, could be a sensor, it could be any kind of sensor, but for theoretical purposes you can think of them as it goes on for infinity, and that is what we mean by these are non-terminating programs that can go on for infinity. In fact, if you want to think about this operation here, you can say that for n equal to 0 to infinity, compute this y n. So, that is kind of an example of non-terminating program. If that infinity is finite, well, that is a finite program that ultimately completes. An infinite program or a non-terminating program does not complete, goes on and on. Okay. So, that is the kind of difference between traditional computing operations that you see in a computing class and what you will be seeing here in this class. In this class, we are concerned about computing non-terminating programs or DSP programs that necessarily do not terminate. Okay. Well, so any question about FIR digital filter? Okay. So, the next simplest thing that we can think about is IIR digital filter. So, as the name indicates, this is infinite impulse response, and that means the impulse response that I talked about previously, which is in this case H n is an n point sequence, n point or n tap digital filter denoted as H 0 through H n minus 1. Simply IIR infinite impulse response means this is not of length, finite length, it goes on and on up to infinity. And if I take a very simple example of a one pole IIR digital filter, 1 minus a z to power minus 1, which had a simple pole at a, and for all practical purposes the a should be magnitude of a should be less than 1, otherwise the filter would be an unstable digital filter, and the unstable digital filter is of no interest in practical systems. Okay. So, so if you write this equivalently in terms of a numerator, or in terms of so if you just expand this 1 over 1 minus x is 1 plus x squared plus x cube and so on. So, we can write that as 1 plus a z to power minus 1 plus a squared z to power minus 2 plus a cube z to power minus 3 and so on. So, that means this single pole filter is equivalent to 1 a z means a. So, this is a squared, a cube at point 100. So, this will be a to power 100, and we will quickly go to 0 as a is less than 1 in magnitude. So, any small number which magnitude is less than 1, you multiply them many times, that result is going to be 0. So, the length of that impulse response is not finite, and that is why it is called an infinite impulse response. But we can still compute that. So, if I write this as the output z transform by the input z transform, and you cross multiply, so you can write y z minus, and if I bring that minus to the other side, becomes plus a z to power minus 1 y z plus x z, and if you take the inverse z transform, so y n would be a y n minus 1 plus x n. So, that says that despite the fact that it is infinite impulse response, we can implement that in a simple way by taking the previous output y n minus 1, multiplying that by a and adding that to the current input x n, and that becomes y n, and I can hold that into a delay element, and that then becomes the previous sample y n minus 1. So, the main difference between FIR and IIR digital filters is that there is a fundamental feedback loop here. So, if you go around, you start here, you go around, come back, there is a loop here, and that loop or recursion is an inherent property of IIR digital filters. Whereas an FIR, finite impulse response, and does not involve any feedback loops, and that is going to be of great interest in this class. So, we will talk more about those things as well. Okay. So, so the fundamental difference between FIR and IIR are the FIR filters are always stable. IIR filters are not necessarily guaranteed to be stable all the time. So, for example, if the pole is close to unit circle, let us say 0.98 or something like that, then it can drift outside 1 and the filter can become unstable. So, stability could be a big problem in IIR filters. Quantization, limit cycles could be a big problem. That means, even though there is no input, there is an output that keeps oscillating, and that is what is called limit cycle, and the period at which it keeps oscillating is called the frequency of the limit cycle. So, okay. So, there are other differences. So, FIR filters can guarantee linear phase property. That means, they can achieve a constant group delay that is independent of the frequency, whereas IIR filters cannot achieve constant group delay. The group delay is going to be dependent on the frequency. We will not get into all those things very much. So, Okay, so that's any question about simple operations like FIR or IIR digital filters? Okay, so the next operation that I want to briefly talk about and is the how to compute the so-called fast Fourier transform. So, in general, if I am computing a linear time invariant system, so let us say I have a linear time invariant system with input x n, with the unit sample response h n, and the output y n is x n convolved with h n. Okay. So, in general, although I did mention that in this particular hardware, if you have this hardware here, and indeed this hardware is fine, we can take one sample at a time and compute the output by using n multiply add operations. So, number of multiply add operations per sample is going to be n in a n tap in an n tap FIR digital filter. So, if we go back to early 1960s or maybe even late 50s, computers in late 50s and 60s, in fact, all the way until late 70s, did not have multiply operation in the CPU. So, the early so-called early computers were performing multiplication operations by shift add operations. So, if the word length of this unit sample response is say 20 bits, and we are performing some audio filtering or whatever, then a multiplication operation would require 20 shift add operations. So, 20 cycles will complete one multiplication operations. And in those days, because the computers could only shift and add and could not really multiply, so reducing this number n, reducing the number of multiply add operations was of great interest. So, if you can reduce the number of multiply add operations, that is then the so called whatever we are computing will be very fast. Nowadays, when we talk about something is fast, that means we might relate that to a clock speed is fast, or might be the CPU speed is fast or something like that. But in those days, in 60s and 50s and 60s, fast meant reducing number of multiplications. So, any time you can reduce the number of multiplications per computation, then that is called a fast algorithm. And if you think about these fast algorithms like fast Fourier transform is in fact a fast algorithm because it reduces the number of multiplication operations. So, so obviously in those days the idea of a real time signal processing did not even exist, and the only thing that one could think about those days is batch mode operation. So, the early computers, well, I mean, when I think about my own programming classes in undergraduate, we were using punch cards, we would leave them at by 4 p.m. and collect our results next day morning at 10 o'clock. That's what is a batch mode processing. Okay, so very simple batch mode, very simple. Okay, so we cannot do a real time operation. Okay, so then we can say, okay, well, if I can't do real time, let me take as many samples, say 10,000 samples. So if I take 10,000 samples of xn and then go through this convolution with the hn and compute something, well, I mean, this case would be 10,000 plus whatever the length minus 1. So that's kind of so compute some output. Okay, so compute let's call it y0n, and those are finished. Then take next 10,000 samples and compute again so-called y1n. And it so happens that people you can't really line them up. You can't say that the first batch output is y0, next batch is y1. I won't get into those details, but you have to be aware of something called overlap add or overlap save in order to line them up correctly and add them. I'm not going to go. I mean, we can spend 10 minutes, but there is no need to do that. So so that's called batch mode processing, and that means so although we talked about the convolution, and here again the same idea of convolution, and so convolving, we are back to convolution now in batch mode, which is not real time, and so convolving an m point. Well, let's talk about an m point with n point requires m times n multiplications, and the okay. So all right. So now I can say, so one way to compute. So there is a lot of detail that goes into, but let me, without going into a lot of these details. So we can say now that y, in this case yin, you can think about this as xin, and we are computing yin. So we can say yin is equal to the inverse DFT of the DFT of xin times the DFT of hin, or so this is computing. So this is, we can think of that as the inverse DFT of xik times hik, which really is computing this so-called circular convolution. Don't worry about these things. So anyway, it's computing. It's not computing linear convolution. It's computing some circular convolution. It doesn't really matter to us. What we are more interested in is we are more interested in the fact that DFT can be computed in a fast way by the so-called fast Fourier transform. So FFT is a way to compute FFT computes the DFT in order of n log n time as opposed to order of n squared time. So if I go back to the original conclusion here, that to compute one output cycle I need n multiply add, and then here if you see the number of multiply add per output cycle per sample. So remember that in n squared time I have already completed n sorry, in order of n log n time, I have already computed n output samples. So, that would be order of log n, something like that. Okay, so per sample, and in many ways that is what is the important thing about FFT. FFT computes faster than simple convolution, especially when we think about we can still think about real time operations. So, instead of thinking about batch by batch, we can think about computing frame by frame or window by window, and that is what real time does anyway nowadays. We are back to using same ideas as before. So, instead of taking one sample at a time, we can compute windowed signal processing operations. So, take 10 seconds, compute it, and then take next 10 seconds. You still have to hold those 10 seconds data in a buffer. You have to hold that in a buffer, and that's kind of an essential part of the design anyway. Okay, so now what I with all that introduction to why Cooley and Tukey reinvented, I should say, the so-called fast Fourier transform couple of 100 years after Gauss had invented that 200 years before Cooley and Tukey. So there are two types of algorithms that Cooley and Tukey developed. This is called decimation in time and decimation in frequency, DIT and DIF. How many of you remember the DIT and DIF FFT? Okay, I am glad many of you do not remember. That is why I thought a review, spending one lecture reviewing these would be useful. Okay, so all right. So we want to compute the DFT of an n point sequence x k. So, that is the DFT coefficients, where k is from 0 to n minus 1. This is summed over all n from 0 to n minus 1 x n e to the power minus j twice pi over n k n. Okay, so that is kind of the definition of the DFT, and the definition of the IDFT, the so called inverse DFT, is x n is 1 over n times x k, and that minus becomes the conjugate, which is plus okay. These are very related problems. I won't talk about that today, but DFT and IDFT are very related. If you can design a great architecture for computing DFT, the same architecture will be another great architecture for computing IDFT. And okay, so what exactly is so called DIT, decimation in time fast Fourier transform? Okay, so I can write xk is equal to x. So, I can divide that into two sums, n equal to 0 to n by 2 minus 1 x n e to power minus j twice pi over n k n, plus n equal to n by 2 to n minus 1 x n e to power minus j twice pi over n k n. Okay, so if I substitute n minus n by 2, and let us call that some other index n prime, and then I can say okay, so that is equivalent to n prime equal to 0 to n prime equal to n by 2 minus 1. So, n prime is n minus n by 2, n minus 1 minus n by 2 is n by 2 minus 1, x n and take the minus n by 2 to the right hand side, that is n prime plus n by 2, and this n is n prime plus n by 2. Okay. So, if I just take that last quantity here, e to the power minus j twice pi over n k n prime times e to power minus j twice pi over n k n by 2. So, e to the power a plus b is e to the power a times e to the power b, and this n cancels out, 2 cancels out, and e to the power minus j k pi. Okay, so something, did I miss something? Let's just make sure I didn't miss something here. Okay, so then we can write x k is equal to okay, let's think about what is this first quantity. So, the first quantity minus j 2 pi k n, I can take that 2 and place that as n by 2. Okay, so, if you think about this is summed from 0 to n by 2 minus 1 x n e to the power minus j something is gone wrong. Something has gone wrong. So, let's see if we can look at my notes that I posted on your website. Okay, let's just quickly go through. Something is going wrong. Okay, so let's connect to the computer now. Okay, so this is from some old class that I took those notes. Okay, so if we are computing a 2-point DFT of A and B, DFT of A and B, and if we call that C and D, then that's C. You can go through that from the definition, that's A plus B, A minus B, and we can say I can compute a 2-point DFT C and D, which is saying C is equal to A plus B and D is equal to A minus B, and that's simply computing the 2-point DFT, and it looks like a butterfly, and that's what is known as a butterfly unit. Okay. Okay, the decimation and time FFT, okay, I can see that I was adding it wrong. So, I was jumping ahead to the DIF and not computing even that. I was not computing correctly. So, I was not computing that. I was not computing either the DIT or DIF correctly. Okay, so well, okay. Let me walk through the derivation so that way we can see. Let me see. So let's start from beginning. Okay. Let's start from beginning. So xk, which is which is here. So xk. So what decimation in time and decimation in frequency means is before we get to that, let's talk about. So if I have a signal, so let's call this as xn, and xn contains 8 samples marked 0 through 7. Now, if I decimate, this is time domain samples. If I decimate these, I take the even samples 0, 2, 4, 6, 1, 3, 5, 7. That is kind of one level of decimation. Okay, so these are the even samples and these are the odd samples. And if you decimate this again, I get 0, 4. Think of these as re-indexed at 0, 1, 2, 3, and then take 0, 2, and 1 and 3, and take these and then 1 and 5, 3 and 7. So the way the decimation in time frequency, decimation in time FFT is designed is essentially take the even samples and odd samples and treat them separately. So that's what is DIT, decimation in frequency. So if we were computing the DIT FFT, so we would take x2k, let's call this x2k the even samples, n by 2 even samples, and x2k plus 1, and then we would compute the outputs, and these would be exactly in correct order. So the input is decimated, output is in correct order. So these are the odd samples. So that's DIT. Decimation and frequency means the frequency domain will be computing even and odd separately, and these will be in order. The inputs will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., just like here. So if the inputs are like this, that's decimated in frequency. If the inputs are decimated, output is in order. Okay, so what that then suggests is that I take the x n here and separate them into two groups, the even group and the odd group. So I can now write this as n equal to 0 to n by 2 minus 1, x 2r, which are the even samples, and we will write another one like same thing like that, n by 2 minus 1 x 2r plus 1, and these are the odd samples. So when n is 2r, then e to power minus j twice pi over n k, I replace n by 2r, e to power minus j twice pi over n k, and I replace n by 2r plus 1. Okay. So this contains the terms containing the even parts. So if you think about what are these parts, well, they are containing terms x0, x2, x4, x6. The even samples, these will be containing x1, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. Okay. So now if you think about, don't worry about the fact that these are denoted 2r, don't worry about that. Just think about so think about these as some other sequence called Gn. Okay. So which is number 0 to n by 2 minus 1, and if I take this 2 from here and write that as 2 pi by n by 2. So we have now some sequence of length n by 2 minus 1, e to power minus j twice pi over the length is n by 2, k r. Okay. So so if you think about something is wrong, this is r equal to, this is r equal to. Okay, so I can now say the first term is well, I should really say GR. So this is the n by 2 point DFT of GR, and I can call that GK. And this is now an n by 2 point DFT. Okay. Now, as I was talking about before, so if you think about if you multiply this out, e to power a plus b is e to power a plus b, then this can be written as e to the power minus j twice pi over n k times 2r times e to power minus j twice pi over n k. Okay. Now, this e to power minus j twice pi over n k is independent of the summing index r, which means I can bring them outside the summing index. So, this becomes g k plus e to power minus j twice pi over n k times whatever is left inside the summing index. If I call this sequence another n by 2 point sequence H r, bring this 2 to the n by 2, and then that becomes simply the n by 2 point DFT of the odd points. So, basically that says that the n point DFT x k can be now described in terms of 2 n by 2 point DFTs. So, this is an n by, so take the even points, n by 2 even points, compute its n by 2 point DFT, take the n by 2 point odd samples, compute the n by 2 point DFT of that, and then merge these together to have this n point DFT, and that is basically what the Cooley-Tukey DIT-FFT does. It says that I can express any n point DFT in terms of 2 n by 2 point DFTs. So, if I want to compute a 1024 point FFT or DFT, I can express that as 2 512 point, each 512 point can be expressed as 2 256 points, each 256 point can be, and you can go on doing that recursively, and that is called the simple process of divide and conquer. And you take a large problem of size n, divide that to 2 smaller size problems of n by 2, and the broad class of algorithms which follow that pattern are called divide and conquer algorithms. Okay. So, it is okay if you have forgotten this, and that is just fine, just go through these derivations again and grab some Wikipedia pages on DFT and FFT. Okay. So, now let us take a very simple example of how we can so the remaining mystery that we need to talk about is, okay, this is n by 2 point, this is n by 2 point. How do I get n point and how do I merge these? So, the very basic property of DFT, if you are computing a 32 point DFT, what you are not explicitly told, but if I compute a 32 point DFT of some signal x n, and you compute x 0 through x 31 in the DFT domain, and that nobody tells you, but x 32 is same as x 0, it is periodic in length 32. So, that periodicity is implicitly assumed because of the periodicity of the basis functions. The basis functions e to power minus j twice pi over n, and k is periodic with period n. So, in this case, if you compute 32 point DFT, so if I say x 35, that is same as x 3. So, these are all period, and implicitly we assume that periodicity, although not explicitly, we do not talk about that. So, so let us say that n is 8, if n is 8, then I can say x 0 is going to be g 0 plus k is 0. K is 0, so e to power 0 is 1 plus h 0. Okay. If I take k is 1, x 1 is equal to g 1 plus e to power minus j twice pi over 8. N is 8, k is 1 times h 1, x 2 is g 2 plus e to the power minus j 4 pi over 8 h 2 and x 3 is g 3 plus e to the power minus j 6 pi by 8 h 3. And now if I substitute k equal to 4, so x 4 is equal to, now g 4, remember this is only 4 point DFT. I do not have something called g 4, I only have g 0, g 1, g 2, g 3. Now, but by virtue of the fact that these are periodic computations, g 4 is going to be same as g 0 plus e to power minus j twice pi over 8 times 4, which is e to the power minus j 8 pi by 8 h 0. H 4 is same as h 0. X 5 is the same as 1 because of the periodicity, plus e to the power minus j 10 pi by 8 h 1. X 6 is g 2 plus e to power minus j 12 pi by 8 h 2, and x 7 is g 3 plus e to power minus j 14 pi by 8 times h 3. Okay, so these look very strange, and really what are we trying to do here? So, okay, so if you think about e to the power minus j pi is minus 1. Okay. E to the power plus j pi is same as e to the power minus j pi is minus 1. So, this is simply minus 1. This is, write this as minus 8 pi by 8 and minus 2 pi by 8. 8 pi by 8 is minus, and then 8 and 4 is 12, 8 and 6. So, I can make this minus, take e to power minus j 8 pi by 8 outside a bracket, and then if you look at these two terms together, g 0 plus h 0, g 0 minus h 0, that is a butterfly. G 1 plus this, g 1 minus this is another butterfly, but I have to compute that h 1, and if I just see the last one, minus plus e to power minus j 6 minus e to power minus j 6, that is the last butterfly. So, what it shows here is that if I have Okay, so that's what is known as the merge operation. So we are now computing. So I didn't show this, but eventually these are the DFTs of x0, x2, x4, x6, the even samples, and these are the odd samples. And again, you can express that as computation of 2 n by 2 point, in this case 2 point. So that's how we merge 2 n by 2 points. So this is n by 2 point DFT, this is n by 2 point DFT, and then multiply these by e to power minus j twice pi over n times k. And typically the book uses DSP textbooks use this term W, which is known as the Twiddle factor. These are the Twiddle factors, and then this could be W, this is W squared, and this is W cube. Okay, so that's kind of what I have done here is the merging operation of the two n by 2 point DFTs. Okay, I will hand out these lecture notes just after the lecture. I'll post them. Let's go back to the slides on the computer. And so, okay, so oh, okay, so let's see here. Okay, so that was decimation in time. Okay, so what does decimation in frequency do? DIF. So the way we derive the DIF is slightly different. So okay, so instead of dividing the right hand side to the even samples and odd samples, here we explicitly compute the even DFTs by substituting k equal to 2r, and the odd DFTs by substituting k equal to 2r plus 1. So the first step, substitute k equal to 2r, compute the even DFTs. So x 2r and replace k by 2r, and now describe these two terms as n equal to 0 to n by 2 minus 1 and n by 2 to n minus 1, and there is a little bit of algebra here, and in particular the right hand side you have to go through the index change. Because it is indexed n by 2 to n minus 1, we need to bring that back to 0 to n by 2 minus 1 and do a summing index n prime is equal to n plus n by 2, just as I did here, and then well, you will get another term, and then that term is 1, because e to the power minus j 2 pi times an integer is 1, or e to power plus j 2 pi times an integer is 1. And then if you take these two terms together, where are we? Yeah. So if you take these two terms together and then take this quantity outside a bracket, bring that 2 to n by 2, it shows that the even DFTs x 2r are the n by 2 point DFTs of the samples x n plus x n plus n by 2. Okay. And with a little more complex algebra, little more complex, it takes few more minutes, and well, I can have you go through this at home, and you can show that x this is the n by the odd samples are the n by 2 point DFT of x n minus x n plus n by 2 times where is a mistake here, oh no mistake, times the these Twiddle factors e to power minus j 2 pi n over n. So anyway, review that. So I do want you to play with these FFTs and the FFT structures. In fact, next week I am going to give you a very long assignment to see the critical path and speed of those things. For this week's homework, Okay, so the problem 4 shows you the DEIF FFT structure for 8 points, and well, so anyway, learn to derive that. Learn to derive also the decimation in time, although I didn't ask you to do that. And then we'll talk more about data flow graphs and so on. So, so in a sense, the class today is meant to be a review of DSP algorithms and structures. We began by talking about the primitive computation of inner products, and then we talked about the convolution, and then we talked about filtering, and I didn't talk a lot, but we then briefly talked about batch mode versus real time, and then why the FFT was of great interest in late 50s and early 60s, anything reducing number of multiplications, and there were so many FFT algorithms. The Winograd FFT was another one by Winograd, who was also at IBM for a long time. And then we talked about FIR, IIR filters, and how these DFT structures are DFT is computed using the so called FFT structures. FFT structures can be either decimation in time or decimation in frequency. These are let me just briefly mention, these are related by the index. If you think about the index, these are related by what we sometimes call bit reversed index. So, if you think about 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay. So, those are the indices, those are the correct, well, in order indices in order. And if you reverse these indices, so 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1 becomes 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And if you look at these numbers, this is 0, 4, 2, 6, 1, 3, 1, 5, 3, 7. So, these are indices in decimated order. So, this is reverse bit positions. So, if we have the signal samples, the input samples in order like this, outputs computed like this, is that decimated in frequency or decimated in time? Inputs in order, decimated, outputs is decimated in frequency. Okay. Outputs in this order, in order, inputs in the decimated order, that is decimated in time. Okay, any questions about today's class? How many of you are familiar with a little bit of Verilog? Okay. How many of you don't want to do any Verilog assignment in this class? You don't want to learn. Yes, yes, there is. I have not decided. Well, the other option would be, well, there are two other options, right? Well, two options. One, you lose points for those homeworks. Two, I give you an alternate homework. But anyway, my first preference is that you learn. Okay, so we have run out of time. See you next class.